They say power and temptation are a deadly mix. I used to think I had control over both, until I met her. It started as an innocent working relationship, and ended in chaos. What happened in that office should have stayed buried, but secrets always have a way of clawing their way to the surface. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is the story of how my secret affair with my secretary unraveled everything I built. I was at the top of my game. CEO of a multi-million-dollar firm, respected, feared, and envied. My days were filled with back-to-back meetings, high-stakes negotiations, and the weight of a company resting on my shoulders. I had everything, wealth, influence, and a beautiful wife, Claire, who stood by my side through it all. But power breeds boredom. And boredom is dangerous. Then came her application, Emily Parker. Young, intelligent, and with an air of quiet confidence that set her apart. I hired her on the spot, convinced she was the perfect fit for my fast-paced world. At first, she was just another employee, efficient and professional. But something about her intrigued me. Maybe it was the way she never seemed intimidated, the way she always held my gaze a second too long. I ignored it at first. Told myself I was reading too much into things. But temptation has a way of creeping in when you least expect it. It started small. Late nights at the office, innocent conversations that turned personal. I convinced myself it was harmless. Claire was busy with charity events, barely noticing when I came home later and later. And Emily, she was always there. Always listening. Then came the night it all changed. A storm raged outside, and the office was nearly empty. Emily stood by my desk, flipping through reports when the power flickered. The dim emergency lights cast eerie shadows, making everything feel intimate. She looked up at me. "Guess we're stuck here for a while." A simple statement. Innocent words. But the way she said it, the way her lips curled into a subtle smirk, I knew then that I had already crossed the line in my mind. And in the next moment, I crossed it for real. One night turned into two. Two into a dangerous pattern. It was intoxicating, secret meetings, stolen glances, whispered conversations in hallways. She became my escape, my addiction. I told myself I still loved Claire. That what I had with Emily wasn't real. But deep down, I knew I was playing with fire. And then, the first red flag. One morning, Emily showed up at my house. My house. Claire was out, but that wasn't the point. She stood on my doorstep, eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. Possession? Obsession? "I wanted to see where you lived," she said, stepping past me without an invitation. It sent a chill down my spine. That was the first time I considered ending it. But I didn't. And that was my biggest mistake. I should have stopped then. Should have seen the warning signs. But affairs don't end cleanly, do they? Emily became more than a secret. She started showing up unexpectedly, at my office outside of work hours, at business events where she had no reason to be. She watched Claire too closely, smiled a little too much when my wife spoke. And then there were the texts. Short messages. "I miss you. Thinking of you." Always sent at the worst possible times, during dinner with Claire, in meetings where I had to pretend I wasn't unraveling inside. I told myself she was just attached. That I could manage it. That I could keep everything under control. But then, Claire started to notice. One evening, as I walked into the house, she stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. "You've been distracted lately." A test. A trap. I laughed it off. Kissed her on the forehead. Just work stress. She didn't look convinced. And neither did Emily. Because a week later, she said something that made my stomach drop. "When are you going to tell her?" "Tell her." "Tell Claire." Emily wasn't asking. She was demanding. I realized then, I wasn't in control anymore. I tried to end it. I really did. I sat Emily down in my office and told her it was over. Her reaction? A smile. A slow, knowing smile. You don't get to decide that. And then she slid her phone across the desk. Photos. Videos. Us. Together. In my office. In hotels. In places I thought were private. My entire world, captured in pixels. My hands went cold. What do you want? She leaned closer. I want what I deserve. It was then I realized, Emily never wanted to be a secret. She wanted something bigger. Something more dangerous. She wanted to take Claire's place. And she was willing to burn my entire life down to make it happen. Emily had me cornered. If I refused her, she could destroy me with a single tap on her phone. If I gave in, I was handing her my life on a silver platter. I needed time to think. To strategize. But Emily wasn't patient. She started pushing boundaries, texting me while Claire was right beside me, calling late at night and hanging up. And then, she escalated. One evening, as Claire and I arrived at a charity gala, I spotted Emily across the room. Not as my secretary. Not as a shadow in the background. She was there as a guest. Dressed in an elegant black gown, sipping champagne as if she belonged. Our eyes met. She smiled. And then, she walked straight to Claire. I felt the blood drain from my face. What was she doing? Claire turned, surprised as Emily extended her hand. Mrs. Carter, it's such a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you. I held my breath, waiting for the explosion. But Claire, ever the gracious hostess, smiled politely. Emily wasn't stupid. She didn't say anything outright. But her eyes flicked to me, a silent message behind them. She was showing me how close she could get. That night, I barely spoke a word to Claire. My mind raced. Emily was dangerous, unpredictable. And worst of all, she was enjoying this. I knew I couldn't go to the police. What would I say? Help, my secretary is blackmailing me because I had an affair. And firing her? That was out of the question. She had too much leverage. So I tried to reason. I invited her to a quiet restaurant outside the city, hoping to negotiate. But the moment she sat down, I knew I'd made a mistake. You look stressed, Daniel, she said, stirring her drink. That's not good. You need someone to take care of you. I clenched my jaw. This stops now. She tilted her head. Or what? I didn't have an answer. And she knew it. She leaned in. You had your fun, but now it's my turn. You built an empire, Daniel. I want a piece of it. Make me vice president of the company. Publicly. Or Claire finds out everything. My pulse pounded in my ears. She didn't just want me. She wanted power. This wasn't about love. It was about control. And I was running out of options. I couldn't give Emily what she wanted. If I did, she would never stop. So I came up with a plan. I started playing along. Pretending to consider her proposal. Acting like she had one. Meanwhile, I was digging. Looking for her weaknesses. And I found one. Emily Parker wasn't who she claimed to be. A private investigator uncovered a trail of deception, past employers she had blackmailed, fabricated credentials, even a restraining order from an ex-boss. She was a professional manipulator. A predator. And now, she had chosen the wrong target. I set my own trap. Emily thought she had me backed into a corner. But she underestimated one thing, I wasn't just a businessman. I was a strategist. I spent years building an empire, outsmarting competitors, anticipating their next moves before they even made them. Emily. She was clever, but she wasn't invincible. So I played along. I let her think I was cracking under pressure. I started sending messages late at night, pretending to be paranoid. I let my work performance slip just enough for people to notice. I let her think she had me completely under her thumb. And then, I set the stage for my final move. I invited her to my private penthouse, somewhere I never took Claire. It was the perfect setting. High above the city, isolated, with no one around to hear what was about to go down. She arrived dressed to kill, confidence radiating from her like perfume. "So, have you made your decision?" she asked, swirling a glass of wine as she lounged on my couch. "Are you ready to give me what I deserve?" I sat across from her, exhaling slowly. "Yes. But I have conditions." Her eyes flickered with amusement. "Conditions?" I leaned in. "You leave Claire out of this. You get what you want, the promotion, the power, but my marriage stays intact. If you cross that line, you get nothing." She considered this, then smirked. "Fair enough." She thought she had won. She had no idea that the entire conversation was being recorded. The next morning, I sent the recording, along with every piece of dirt I had on Emily, to my lawyers. I filed a formal complaint against her, exposing her history of blackmail and deception. Then, I sent the recording to the board of directors. By noon, Emily Parker was finished. Security escorted her out of the building. Her emails were wiped, her credentials revoked. She was a ghost before she even realized what had happened. But she didn't go quietly. As she was being dragged out, she screamed threats, promises of revenge. "You think this is over, Daniel? You think you can just erase me?" But I didn't flinch. Because Emily. She wasn't a queen. She was a pawn. And I had just taken her off the board. I thought it was over. Thought I had won. Until a week later, when I received an envelope on my desk. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single photograph. A picture of Claire. Standing outside a cafe. Smiling. And scrawled in red ink beneath it, "Miss me?" My blood ran cold. I stared at the photograph, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The message was clear: Emily wasn't done with me. I had destroyed her career, erased her from my company, and exposed her for what she was. But she still had one last weapon. Revenge. I couldn't let her get close to Claire. Couldn't let her sink her claws into my wife the way she had me. So I did the only thing I could. I confessed. That night, as Claire and I sat in the dimly lit living room, I told her everything. Not just the affair, but the blackmail, the threats, the games Emily had been playing. Claire didn't speak. Didn't even blink. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she stood up, walked to the bar, and poured herself a drink. Finally, she turned to me. "So, what are we going to do about her?" I frowned. "We." She smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. "Oh, Daniel. Did you really think I'd just leave after this? After everything we've built?" "No, no. Emily made a mistake coming after me." My stomach twisted. There was something in her eyes I had never seen before. And that's when I realized. I wasn't the only one keeping secrets. A week later, Emily disappeared. No messages. No threats. No sudden appearances. It was like she had been wiped off the map. Claire never asked about her again. Never even mentioned her name. And I never questioned it. Because some secrets are better left buried. For secrets unraveled, like and subscribe.